The night in Chicago carried a weight of its own, thick with smoke, neon, and secrets no one dared speak aloud. Elena Monroe had grown up in the city long enough to know that power here didn't rest in courtrooms or political offices. Power lived in the streets, in the shadows, in the men people whispered about but never named out loud. And no name burned hotter, darker than Adrian Cross. He was the kind of man Chicago feared, the kind whose empires stretched beyond what the eye could see. Clubs, casinos, docks, entire neighborhoods bent under his influence. He wasn't a mayor, wasn't a cop, wasn't even on paper half the time. But everyone knew. Nothing moved in Chicago unless Adrian Cross allowed it. Elena never planned to cross him. She had her own battles law school, endless jobs to keep herself afloat, the heavy shadow of a family debt her father left behind when he disappeared. She believed if she kept her head down, worked hard, and avoided the underworld, she could make it. That belief shattered the night she walked into the Crimson Room. It was supposed to be just another bar, a place to unwind with her roommate after a week of exams. But the moment she stepped inside, she realized it wasn't like any bar she had seen before. Crystal chandeliers hung low, blood-red velvet lined the booths, and every patron looked like they had money dripping from their veins. At the center of it all, seated with a glass of whiskey and a gaze that could freeze fire, was Adrian Cross. She hadn't meant to catch his eye. She hadn't meant for her gaze to linger too long. But she did, and Adrian noticed. Hours later, when her roommate stumbled home drunk, Elena stepped outside to call a cab. Rain slicked the pavement, the city humming in the distance. That was when she felt it, that sharp awareness of being watched. Turning slowly, she found him leaning against the sleek black car at the curb, the glow of a street lamp catching the sharp lines of his face. "You shouldn't stare at men like me," he said, his voice a low rasp that slid through the night. Elena tightened her grip on her phone. "I wasn't staring. Yes, you were." He pushed off the car, each step deliberate, like a predator in no hurry to chase because he knew the prey couldn't escape. And now I can't stop wondering why. Her heart raced, but she refused to back down. "I don't owe you an explanation." That smirk, slow, dangerous, devastating, spread across his lips. "You're brave." Stupid, but brave. His hand brushed her wrist as he passed her, just a whisper of contact, enough to make her shiver. He leaned close, his words warm against her ear. "Careful, sweetheart. Curiosity has a cost in this city." He left her standing there, shaken and restless, his voice echoing long after he disappeared. Elena thought that was the end of it. But Adrian Cross wasn't the kind of man who left things unfinished. The next week, she saw him again, outside her campus, leaning casually against his car. As if he had every right to be there. Her classmates whispered, staring at the suited man who looked like trouble personified. He didn't move until she walked past, and then he fell into step beside her. "You've been on my mind," he said simply. She shot him a glare. "That sounds like your problem, not mine," he chuckled, a low sound that made heat curl through her despite herself. "No, Elena, it's definitely yours." From that day forward, Adrian became a shadow in her life. He appeared at the coffee shop where she studied, at the library, even once outside her apartment building. He didn't threaten her, didn't touch her without permission, but his presence was suffocating, impossible to ignore. He spoke to her in riddles, in half-truths, pulling her deeper into his orbit with every encounter. And the worst part, she was drawn to him. Against every warning in her head, every instinct screaming to run, she found herself craving his voice, his gaze, the way he looked at her like she was something rare in a city full of ordinary. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Elena had just finished a late shift at the bookstore, where she worked when she saw two men waiting near the alley. their eyes sharp, predatory. Panic clawed at her throat. Before she could move, a black car pulled up, the window rolling down to reveal Adrian. "Get in," he ordered. She hesitated. "Elena." His voice was sharper now, carrying that edge of steel everyone in Chicago feared. Now, against every instinct, she slid inside. The door shut, locking her into his world. For the first time, she realized she wasn't just playing with fire. She had already been burned. The ride was silent, tense, thick with unspoken truths. When they reached his penthouse, the city glittering beneath them, Adrian finally spoke. "You don't understand yet," he said, pouring himself a drink and setting it down untouched. "But you will. You're in my world now. And once I claim something, I don't give it back." Eleanor's pulse hammered as he stepped closer, his hand brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch was gentle, but his eyes promised anything but, "You should hate me," he murmured. "So why do you look at me like that?" She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe I do." Adrian smiled, slow and dark, before his lips finally crashed against hers. The kiss was fire and ruin, filled with hunger that left her gasping. She hated him. She wanted him. She feared him. And yet, as his hands pulled her closer, as the city lights painted their bodies in gold and shadow, she realized the truth. She was already his. The rain came heavy that night, coating the streets of Chicago in a slick sheen that reflected neon signs and the blur of passing cars. Elena Monroe had never been afraid of storms, but this night was different. She felt the city pressing in around her, watching her every move, daring her to make a mistake. Maybe it was because of him. Adrian Cross. Ever since she had walked into that velvet-draped club, caught his gaze across the room and refused to look away, she had felt his presence shadowing her. At first, she told herself it was a coincidence, that the man everyone whispered about would never waste time on her. But then came the black car outside her campus, the smirk when he fell into step beside her on the sidewalk, the way his voice dropped low enough to send chills across her skin whenever he said her name. He wasn't a coincidence. He was a storm she couldn't outrun. Tonight she was too tired to fight it. Her shift at the bookstore had dragged late, and the weight of her father's debts pressed heavy on her shoulders. She just wanted to get home. But as she turned the corner, she saw them two men standing near the alleyway, eyes sharp, their stance predatory. Fear spiked through her chest, freezing her in place. And then, like he had been waiting for her all along, Adrian's car pulled up. The tinted window rolled down, and there he was, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Get in," he ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. Elena hesitated, her throat dry, her heart racing. "Elena." His voice cut sharper this time, steel beneath silk. "Now." Her body moved before her mind could catch up. She slipped into the car, the door shutting her inside his world, sealing her fate. The drive was silent. She could feel him watching her, his presence filling the air like smoke, intoxicating and suffocating at the same time. She wanted to demand answers, to tell him to leave her alone, but her voice refused to obey. When the car pulled into the underground garage of his high-rise, she finally found her courage. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" Adrian stepped out first, circling to open her door himself, his hand extended, and when she didn't take it, he leaned down, his eyes level with hers. "What I want is simple, you." Her breath caught. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he murmured, his voice dark velvet. "I know you're not afraid of me the way you should be. I know you've been looking for something, maybe freedom, maybe danger. And I know, Elena, that the way you looked at me that night wasn't an accident." Before she could respond, his hand slipped under her chin, tilting her face up until his eyes were the only thing she could see. "Come upstairs with me." "I won't ask again," She should have said no. She should have turned and walked away. Instead, she found herself following him into the private elevator, her pulse thundering with every floor they rose. By the time the doors slid open, she was trembling not from fear, but from the dangerous anticipation curling low in her stomach. The penthouse was nothing like she imagined. Sleek, modern, glass walls overlooking the glittering city below. But she barely had a chance to take it in before Adrian's hand slid across her lower back, guiding her toward the windows. "Look," he said softly, his lips brushing against the shell of her ear. "Chicago belongs to me. Every street, every deal, every shadow. And now, so do you." Her pulse hammered at his words. "You don't own me." His smile was sharp, dangerous, almost predatory. "Not yet. But you will." When he kissed her, it wasn't a question. It was a claim. His mouth moved against hers, with a hunger that stole her breath, his hands tangling in her hair, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them. Elena gasped into the kiss, torn between pushing him away and melting into him. She chose the latter. He lifted her easily, her legs wrapping around his waist as if her body had been waiting for this moment all along. The city burned below them, but Adrian's world was all she could see, all she could feel. His lips trailed down her neck, his teeth grazing her skin in a way that made her gasp. "Say my name," he whispered against her throat. "Adrian," she breathed, the sound of it pulling a groan from his chest. That night blurred into heat and shadows, his touch relentless, hers desperate. Every wall she had built crumbled under his hands, every ounce of logic drowned in the storm he brought. She had promised herself she would never belong to anyone, that she would never repeat her father's mistakes of owing her life to a man like Adrian. But when his body pressed against hers, when his lips claimed every part of her, she realized she was already lost. Hours later, when she lay tangled in his sheets, the city lights washing over their skin, Adrian brushed a strand of hair from her face. His expression was softer now, but his eyes still burned with possession. "You're mine, Elena," he said quietly. "And I don't share what's mine." Her chest tightened at the certainty in his voice, equal parts terrifying and intoxicating. She should have argued. She should have told him this was a mistake. Instead, she whispered back, "What happens if I run?" His smirk returned, slow and dangerous. "Then I'll find you. Because there's nowhere in this city you can hide from me." And the terrifying truth was, she didn't want to hide. What Elena didn't know was that stepping into Adrian's world meant more than surrendering her body or her heart. It meant stepping into a war of loyalty and betrayal, a game where blood was currency and love was the most dangerous gamble of all. Adrian had enemies waiting in the shadows, and by choosing him, Elena had just painted a target on her own back. But as his hand closed over hers that night, as his lips pressed one last lingering kiss to her skin, she knew one thing with bone-deep certainty. She would rather burn with Adrian Cross than live untouched by him. And in Chicago, every fire left scars. The morning light spilled across the glass walls of Adrian's penthouse, painting the room in gold. Elena stirred beneath the sheets, her body aching from the night before. For a moment, her lips still swollen from his kisses. For a moment, she let herself enjoy the warmth of it, the rare sense of safety in his arms. But then she remembered who he was. Adrian Cross, a man built from danger, blood and shadows. A man no one walked away from unscarred. She tried to slip out of bed quietly, but his arm tightened around her waist, pulling her back against him. His voice was low, rough with sleep but still commanding. "Going somewhere?" Her breath caught. "I have class," she murmured. "You don't need to worry about that anymore," he said, pressing his lips to her shoulder. Elena twisted to face him, her eyes sharp. "I worked for years to get here. You don't get to decide that for me." He studied her, amused and dark. "You think you still have a choice, sweetheart? After last night, you belong to me." She should have argued, but the way he looked at her, hungry, possessive, unyielding, made her heart pound in ways she didn't understand. When his mouth claimed hers again, she melted despite herself, surrendering to the fire only he could ignite. The sheets tangled around them as he pulled her closer, his hands tracing every curve like he was memorizing her all over again. She gasped when his lips trailed down her body, her nails digging into his skin as pleasure and fear collided in her veins. He took his time, relentless and raw, until Elena was left trembling, moaning his name into the quiet morning. Afterward, when her breathing finally slowed, he whispered against her lips, "You taste like sin, and I've always been a sinner." Her chest tightened, torn between desire and dread. She wanted to believe this was only lust, that it wouldn't drag her deeper. But deep down, she knew she was already caught. The knock on the penthouse door shattered the moment. Adrian's entire demeanor changed in an instant, softness gone, danger slipping back into place. He pulled on his shirt, his eyes cold and sharp as he strode across the room. Elena sat up, clutching the sheets to her chest as the door opened. A man in a black suit stepped inside, his expression tense. "We have a problem," the man said. His eyes flicked briefly to Elena, then back to Adrian. "It's Marcus." "He knows." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Knows what?" "That you've been keeping her." Elena froze. Her heart pounded as Adrian's gaze shifted back to her, his face unreadable. "Who's Marcus?" she whispered. Adrian stepped closer, his hand cupping her face with deceptive gentleness. "My biggest enemy in this city. And now he knows you exist." Her blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" His eyes darkened, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "It means, Elena, you're no longer just mine. You're his target." Elena barely had time to process the weight of Adrian's words before he dismissed the man in the suit with a flick of his hand. The door shut, leaving only silence thick enough to choke her. She clutched the sheet tighter, her voice trembling. "You knew this would happen. You knew being with you would make me a target." Adrian stood in front of her, unbuttoning his shirt with slow precision, as though the threat outside meant nothing. His eyes locked on hers, dark and unwavering. "I warned you," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Curiosity has a price, and now you're mine to protect, whether you like it or not." She wanted to argue, to scream, but when he leaned down and kissed her, all her resistance dissolved. His mouth was demanding, claiming his hands, pulling her against him until the sheet slipped away and she was bare under his touch. "Adrian," she gasped, her body arching into him despite the chaos in her mind. "Say my name like that again," he growled against her throat, his teeth grazing her skin. "Say it like you need me." Her nails scraped against his back, her moans filling the room as he pushed her back onto the bed. There was nothing gentle this time, only raw hunger, his need to remind her who she belonged to before the world outside tried to take her. Every kiss was fierce, every touch deliberate, leaving her trembling, begging, lost in him. When it was over, Elena lay tangled in the sheets, her body still humming with desire, her heart aching with fear. Adrian brushed his lips against her ear, whispering words that chilled and thrilled her all at once. "Marcus won't touch you. Not while I'm breathing." But even as he said it, she saw something in his eyes, something he was hiding. Later that night, when Adrian stepped out to take a call, Elena wandered through the penthouse, trying to quiet her restless thoughts. She stopped when she found a locked drawer half open in his office. Curiosity got the better of her. She slid it open just enough to glimpse photographs. Her breath caught. Pictures of her walking to class, leaving the coffee shop, even sleeping in her apartment. All taken long before they had ever spoken. The phone call ended. She heard his footsteps approaching. Heart pounding, she shut the drawer quickly and forced herself back toward the bedroom. When Adrian entered, his sharp eyes caught the shift in her expression instantly. He closed the distance between them, tilting her chin up with dangerous gentleness. "What did you see?" She swallowed hard, her voice breaking. "You were watching me. Before we even met, for the first time." His mask cracked, and a smirk curved his lips. "Of course I was. You think I let anything I want just wander into my life? No, Elena, I chose you long before you even knew my name." Her blood ran cold, but her body betrayed her with the same shiver of desire his every word brought. She hated how much she wanted him even as the danger wrapped tighter around her. Because if Marcus wanted to use her against Adrian, she realized with a sick twist in her chest, it was already too late. She was the weakness he swore he didn't have. Chapter 1. The marriage that wasn't a choice. The sound of clinking glasses, laughter, and violins filled the ballroom. But Ava Hayes felt like she was choking. Her fingers twisted the hem of her silk dress, nails digging into the fabric as the reality settled in this wasn't a dream. It was a nightmare. She was standing next to him. Ethan Carter. Every girl in town called him the devil dressed in Armani. And he really was. Arrogant, ruthless, and cold as hell. His grey eyes cut sharper than broken glass. And the smirk he carried like he owned. Every damn thing in sight made her want to slap him straight across the face. But instead, here she was, his wife. Her father had signed the papers. Their businesses merged. Ava's freedom got sold in the process. And Ethan, of course, looked like he'd won some game. "Smile, sweetheart," Ethan whispered close to her ear, his voice low and laced with mockery. "You don't want the cameras to catch how much you hate me already, do you?" Ava's jaw clenched. "Go to hell." He smirked wider, leaning back just enough to look at her. "Darling, I think hell came to us the second you said, 'I do.'" Her blood boiled. God, if only she could rip off these heels and storm out. But she couldn't. Her family's company was at stake. Her father's health on the line. She had no choice. When the photographer called them closer, Ethan snaked an arm around her waist. His grip was firm, almost possessive, and the way he pulled her in made her body stiffen. He bent his head, lips brushing dangerously close to her ear again. "Relax, wifey," he murmured. "You'll make people think I forced you into this." Her heart thudded at the word. Forced. Because that's exactly what it was. Ava plastered on the fakest smile she could manage. The camera flashed. Ethan's hand lingered on her lower back, and she could feel the power play in his touch. Everyone saw a picture-perfect couple. No one saw the storm brewing inside her. Later that night, when the guests had left and the mansion grew quiet, Ava finally let herself breathe. She kicked off. Her heels in their massive bedroom, the one they were supposed to share, and glared at Ethan, who was loosening his tie like he didn't have a care in the damn world. "This isn't a marriage," she snapped. Ethan tilted his head, eyes darkening as he studied her. "No? Then what do you call it, princess? A transaction? A prison?" Her voice cracked, but she held her chin high. He chuckled, low and dangerous, stepping closer. "Call it whatever the hell you want. You're still mine now." Ava's breath hitched. His nearness was suffocating. Intoxicating even. She hated that her pulse raced when he towered over her. Hated that his cologne was already in her lungs. She swallowed hard. "I will never be yours." For a moment, Ethan's smirk faltered, replaced by something sharper, something possessive. He leaned down until his lips brushed against her hair. His voice rough. "Careful, Ava. You'll find that in this house. Never doesn't exist." Her heart pounded like it wanted to break free. And for the first time, Ava realized this marriage wasn't just forced. It was dangerous. Chapter 2. The night that changed everything. The bedroom door slammed shut behind them, the sound echoing like a verdict. Ava froze, her chest rising and falling too fast. She'd spent the whole night convincing herself she'd lock him out, that she'd draw a line so thick he couldn't cross it. But Ethan Carter never cared about lines. He loosened his tie, tossing it onto the chair, his grey eyes never leaving her. The silence was thick, charged. He looked like a predator who already knew his prey wasn't running anywhere. Ava forced herself to speak, even though her throat was dry. "You're not touching me tonight." His lips curved into that dangerous smirk again. "Sweetheart, you don't get to tell me what I can or can't do." Not anymore. She backed up a step, then another, until her back hit the edge of the giant bed. Her pulse hammered in her ears. "This marriage doesn't mean anything. You can't just..." "Can't?" Ethan cut her off, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. He grabbed her chin, tilting her face up until she was forced to meet his eyes. His touch wasn't gentle. It was rough, claiming, "Watch me." Ava's breath came out shaky, but anger still burned inside her. "You don't own me, Ethan." His jaw tightened, his voice dropping lower. "Don't I?" And before she could protest again, his mouth crashed onto hers. The kiss wasn't sweet, it was raw, fierce, demanding. She pushed against his chest, but his grip only tightened, pulling her closer until her body was flush against his. Her hands balled into fists against him, but the heat that shot through her veins betrayed her. She hated that her lips parted under his, hated the moan that slipped out when his tongue slid against hers. "God, you taste like fire," Ethan muttered against her mouth, his voice rough. "I knew you'd fight me. But damn, Ava, you want this as much as I do." "I don't," she whispered, breathless, but the lie trembled on her lips. Ethan's hands slid down, gripping her hips, lifting her onto the bed with a roughness that made her gasp. He hovered over her, his weight pressing her down, his eyes burning with hunger and something darker. "You can lie to yourself all night," he said, brushing his mouth along her jaw, down to her throat. "But your body won't lie to me." Ava arched when his lips found her neck, biting down just enough to leave a mark. Her fingers betrayed her, clutching his shirt, pulling him closer when she should have shoved him away. "Ethan!" Her voice cracked between defiance and surrender. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. His gaze was wild, obsessive. "Say my name like that again and I swear, you'll never forget what it feels like to be mine." A war raged inside her: hate, anger, fear, and a desire that scared her more than anything. She should have resisted. She wanted to. But as his mouth claimed hers again, harder, deeper, her body betrayed her completely. For the first time, Ava realized this wasn't just a battle she could win. This was the beginning of her undoing. Chapter 3: Running from the Devil. The mansion was silent. Too silent. Ava's heart thundered as she shoved a small bag into the closet, stuffing it with whatever she could grab. Her hands were trembling, but her mind was made up she couldn't stay here another night with him. Not after the way he kissed her. Not after the way her body betrayed her, melting into his like it belonged there. She hated him for it. Hated herself even more. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. Perfect. The guards at the front gate. Always rotated shifts then. She'd seen it earlier. If she was fast enough, she could slip out through the side door and disappear before Ethan even noticed she was gone. She pushed the zipper closed, slung the bag over her shoulder, and tiptoed toward the door. But the second her hand touched the knob, a voice sliced through the darkness. "Going somewhere, wifey?" Ava froze. Her blood went ice cold. Slowly she turned. Ethan leaned casually against the wall near the window, his arms crossed, his shirt half unbuttoned, his grey eyes glowing like steel in the shadows. He looked infuriatingly calm, but his jaw ticked a silent warning that she was in deep trouble. Her throat tightened. Move. He arched a brow, pushing off the wall. Move? You really think you get to walk out on me? On us? There is no us, Ava snapped, gripping the bag tighter. You don't own me, Ethan. This marriage doesn't give you that right. He chuckled darkly, stepping closer with slow, deliberate strides that made her chest pound. Doesn't it? Because last time I checked, you signed the papers. You stood in that church. You said the words. You're mine, Ava. Legally. Physically. In every damn way that matters. God, you're insane. She hissed, trying to sidestep him. But he caught her wrist, yanking her back hard enough that the bag slipped from her shoulder and thudded to the floor. Ethan's voice was low, rough. Yeah, maybe I am. But you still married me. You still belong to me. Ava's chest heaved as she tried to twist free. Let me go. He slammed her back gently against the wall. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough that escape was impossible. His body pressed into hers, his hand gripping her wrist above her head, pinning her in place. Say it again, he demanded, his lips inches from hers. Tell me you don't feel anything when I touch you. Tell me you hate me. Lie to my face, Ava. Her lips parted, words caught in her throat. She wanted to scream at him, to push him away. But his heat seeped into her. His breath fanned across her mouth, and her body betrayed her all over again, her pulse racing, her knees going weak. You can't, Ethan murmured, his free hand sliding to her waist, pulling her tighter against him. Because your body's already mine. Every damn part of you. She shivered, her heart screaming run while her body whispered stay. Ethan! Her voice broke, a mix of defiance and desperate need. That was all it took. His mouth crashed onto hers, fiercer than the night before. This wasn't a kiss. It was a war. His teeth grazed her lip. His tongue demanded entrance. And she hated how fast she gave in, her fingers tangling in his shirt, as if clinging to the very man she swore she despised. He groaned against her lips, breaking the kiss only to trail hot, biting kisses down her neck, sucking just hard enough to leave a mark that made her gasp. His voice came out ragged. You think you can run from me? Sweetheart, you'll never make it past the door. I'll always find you, always. Her head fell back, her breath shaky as his mouth worshipped her throat, her collarbone, every inch of skin he could reach. She fought to keep her voice steady. You can't keep me here forever. His hand slid lower, gripping her thigh, lifting it to wrap around his hip as his body pressed harder against hers. His eyes met hers again, dark, hungry, dangerous. Watch me, he growled. Ava's resistance crumbled in waves. Every touch, every kiss, every bite dragged her deeper into a storm she couldn't escape. Her moans filled the room, betraying her hate, betraying her fear. And when Ethan finally carried her to the bed, pinning her beneath him with a look that promised both ruin and salvation, she knew the truth. This wasn't just a marriage. It was a battlefield. And she was already losing. Chapter 4. Fire and chains. The room was dark, but it pulsed with heat. Ava's skin burned under Ethan's touch, every brush of his mouth against her throat unraveling her piece by piece. The fight was gone. The resistance a fragile ghost. She hated him, but right now, she hated herself more for wanting him this badly. He pressed her into the sheets, his body caging hers, his grey eyes burning with a hunger that felt like it could eat her alive. His lips moved over her jaw, down her collarbone, leaving fire in their wake. You drive me insane, he muttered against her skin, his voice rough, broken. Every word out of your mouth makes me want to ruin you. And every sound you make pulls me closer. Ava's breath came out shaky, her fingers fisting the sheets before sliding into his hair, tugging when his lips found the hollow of her neck. A moan escaped her lips, betraying every wall she'd built. "Ethan," she whispered, trembling. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his hand gripping her chin firmly, making her eyes lock onto his. "Say it again." Her chest rose and fell rapidly. "Ethan." Something snapped in him. He kissed her again. Slower this time, but deeper, more dangerous. Like he was claiming her soul, not just her body. Ava's world spun as his hands traced her curves, every touch making her body scream for more. It was raw. It was wrong. But it was theirs. Just when the heat threatened to consume them both. Bang! A sharp knock on the bedroom door broke through the haze. Ava's eyes shot wide open. Ethan froze, his body going still above her. The silence that followed was heavy, charged. "Mr. Carter," came a muffled voice from outside. "One of the guards. There's been movement at the gates. We think someone's trying to get in." Ethan's jaw clenched. Fury flared in his eyes as he looked down at Ava, his chest heaving. For a second, she thought he might ignore it, but then he growled low. "Dangerous. Stay, right here." His voice was sharp, leaving no room for argument. He slid off the bed, snatching his shirt from the floor and yanking it on with rough movements. His eyes cut to hers one last time, sharp and possessive. "If anyone even breathes near you, Ava, they're dead." Her heart skipped. She believed him. As the door clicked shut behind him, Ava lay there, her body still trembling, lips swollen from his kisses, mind spinning from what almost happened. She should have felt relief at the interruption. She should have prayed for distance. But instead, she found herself aching for him to come back. When Ethan finally returned, his shirt half undone, his expression dark, he walked straight to the bed. "Handled," he muttered, climbing back over her like he hadn't left at all. His eyes softened just enough to make her breath hitch. "Now, where were we?" And when his mouth claimed hers again, harder, deeper, Ava knew. This wasn't just a night. This was the start of being consumed. Chapter 5. The night of no turning back. The moment Ethan shut the door behind him, Ava felt her lungs seize. The air was heavy, thick with everything they hadn't said. He didn't look like a man coming back from handling danger. He looked like a storm that had decided to stay. His shirt hung open, his chest rising and falling as his gaze pinned her in place. She lay half tangled in the sheets, her hair messy, her lips still swollen from his earlier kisses, and the way his eyes darkened at the sight of her, like she was the only thing he'd ever wanted, made her heart stumble. He moved toward her slowly, like a predator savoring the hunt. Every step made her pulse race faster. "You thought you could run from me," he said, his voice low, rough. "Now you won't even move." Ava swallowed hard, forcing herself to sit up. "You're insane," he smirked, crawling onto the bed, closing the space between them until her back pressed into the pillows. "Maybe, but you're mine all the same." Before she could snap back, his lips crushed against hers. This kiss wasn't like the last ones. It wasn't rushed or angry. It was deeper, slower, burning like a fuse that refused to die out. His tongue teased hers, his teeth grazing her bottom lip, and the sound that escaped her chest was shameless.
Hey guys, if you really enjoy watching my videos and want me to post such type of content daily, then please like, subscribe, and share the channel. I love you so much. Please show love.